Good morning, and welcome to Associations Now Daily at the 2020 ASAE Virtual Annual Meeting in Exposition. I'm Julie Shoup, Editor-in-Chief of Associations Now. I'll be your host each morning as our program kicks off your day of learning, networking, and reconnecting with your association colleagues. We're also celebrating 100 years of association leadership as we mark ASAE's centennial. Although we can't be together in person this year, we're pretty sure the next 3 days will be a fresh reminder of everything you love about the association community. Now, ordinarily, we would greet you each morning at your doorstep with the Daily Now newspaper. Instead, we hope you'll spend a few minutes with us here each morning to get a preview of the day's highlights and see some familiar faces, as well as some new ones. I hope you'll join us each day at 9:15. Our first guest this morning is today's keynote speaker, Leon Logothetis, who did the kind of radical thing people usually just talk about but never actually do. He toured the globe on his vintage motorbike, encountering strangers and making friends worldwide. He chronicled this adventure in the Netflix series, The Kindness Diaries. Leon will speak to my colleague Rashida Childress in just a moment, but before you meet him, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's program, Caesars Entertainment. Here's a brief word from Caesars.
Hey ASAE, this is Lisa Messina coming to you live from the Caesars Forum. We're sorry we weren't able to host your closing reception at the Caesars Forum Plaza, but we will look forward to hosting you in the near future. For now, here we are virtually with you to share a little bit about what's going on with Las Vegas's newest conference center, Caesars Forum, featuring the 2 largest pillarless ballrooms ever built in the world, a 100,000 square foot plaza with the skyline of Las Vegas best from Harrah's Link Flamingo and the High Roller as your backdrop. Once the world starts traveling again, we can't wait to have you live and in person to see Las Vegas's newest conference center, Caesars Forum.
I'm Rashida Childress, and today's keynote speaker, Leon Logothetis, is joining us. Leon is a global adventurer, motivational speaker, philanthropist, and creator of the book and Netflix show, The Kindness Diaries, in which he tells the story of how he traveled the world on his motorbike to find the good in humanity. Leon, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
When people think of kindness, they don't really associate it with their work lives. What role should kindness play in people's professional lives?
Look, I think that sometimes people think that when they go to work, their best selves doesn't go with them, right? Mm-hmm. But I would like to say that our best selves should come with us at all times. There's no perfection, of course, but we spend most of our time at work. That's just the way it is. So my suggestion and my challenge to people would be not to leave their kindness on the, on the door outside of their workplace, but to bring it with them, because that's really where the most challenging times that we have is when we're at work. And if we can use our heart and our ability to connect with each other at work, it's a better thing, no?
Absolutely. Now, I've watched your Netflix show, The Kindness Diaries, where you rely on kindness to support you during your travels. On that show, you get told no a lot when you ask for help. While I know your goal is to focus on kindness, what is it that you found that is at the forefront of why people are sort of unkind?
Look, I think that a lot of us are in pain, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of us have suffered some type of trauma, whether it be a big trauma or a lot of little traumas. And when that happens, our heart closes off, right? And when your heart closes down, it's much more difficult to be kind. It's much more difficult to let out your own magnificence. So I tell people that one of the most beautiful things to do is to share your pain. Because when you share your pain, your heart opens that little bit more. But many of us don't. Many of us, may watch too much Netflix, or many of us may drink a little bit too much instead of sharing that pain.
So following up with that, are there things that people should be doing to help put them in the right frame of mind to be kind?
Well, a wise lady, Maya Angelou, once said that people don't remember what you say to them. They remember how you make them feel. And you know, and I know, and I would imagine everyone who's listening to this knows what it feels like when someone is unkind to you. And I hope you realize and feel and remember what it feels like when someone is kind to you. Sometimes people say to me, what's the secret source of kindness, Leon? Well, the secret source of kindness is empathy. And when you have empathy for another human being, more often than not, you go out of your way to make them feel better, because you know what it feels like when someone makes you feel like you have no value.
Now, we're in the midst of a global pandemic, one that's very much out of control in the U.S. How important is kindness at this point in time?
Kindness is always important, but more so now, right? Because many people are suffering. There's a lot of pain going on. And, you know, we're not all doctors, so we can't all save people, but what we can do is help people by showing up with some love in our hearts, by making someone feel seen, by making someone feel valued. And these are really important ways to kind of change societies and change culture. I mean, you turn on the news and everyone's screaming at each other, right? So first of all, turn off the news. And secondly, turn on your heart.
And lastly, one of the things that you do on your show is repay kindness by offering meaningful gifts to people who you really connect with. Do you have any advice on how to really connect with another person, especially now that people are physically distant?
Yeah, in the show, you'll notice that I cannot accept money. Because accepting money is something simple. Someone can just say, oh, here's $20 or here's $5. I can only accept kindness. I can only accept compassion. I can only accept a heart connection. And that, to me, is the way that the best way forward. It's how you show up. It's how you show up in your daily life. It's how you show up moment to moment. It's the greatest gift that you can give to another human being, is to see them, is to make them feel valued, simply to show up with your presence intact to the best of your ability, right? We can't always be 100% present. So that gift of giving of yourself, of giving of your love, of giving of your being is the most important way to show kindness in this day and age, and I'm sure in all the history of humanity.
Thanks so much for talking with us today, Leon. I'm super excited to hear you present later.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, back to you, Julie.
Thank you, Rashida and Leon. Now, as you know, we're celebrating ASAE's 100th anniversary this year. To help mark the occasion, the ASAE Research Foundation has been engaged in a 2-year study of how associations have made a positive impact on society. The Impact Every Day initiative includes a collection of case studies demonstrating association impact in 3 areas: public protection, education, and workforce knowledge. One of those case studies comes from the National Council for Behavioral Health, which spearheaded an effort to train 1 million people in how to recognize and intervene when someone is experiencing a mental health crisis. Joining me now is Betsy Schwartz, Vice President of Public Education and Special Initiatives at NCBH, to talk about the impact of that effort called Mental Health First Aid. Welcome, Betsy.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, unfortunately, mental health issues are extremely common, but not everyone knows what to do when a loved one or a friend seems to be in trouble. What skills do people learn in the mental health first aid training?
Mental health first aid teaches people how to recognize when somebody has a mental health or an addiction-related problem. And even more importantly than recognizing, it teaches people the very practical skills of how to respond to someone appropriately, how to be helpful, how to have the confidence and be okay really having a conversation with someone. You know, we all have the best of intentions. We really want to be able to help someone, but we don't always feel confident and comfortable in knowing how to have that conversation. And that's what mental health first aid is all about.
Now, this is not a new program. You launched in 2008. What impacts have you been able to measure?
We brought the program from Australia in 2008, and then a number of years later, when we had trained 500,000 people, we wanted to get to the threshold of 1 million people. So we came up with this campaign called Be One in a Million. I'm pleased to say that as of now, we've trained 2.5 million people, and we have solid research that really demonstrates the effectiveness of the learning that it happens when somebody takes the class. While we're happy that we have trained 2.5 million, we know in a country this size where hundreds of millions of people need the training, our current goal is to train 1 million people a year.
That's a big, ambitious goal. Now, 2020 has brought a series of new crises and layers of uncertainty to people's lives, so this need is ever present. I know mental health first aid also teaches self-care. What's one self-care technique that you think is particularly important today?
Well, certainly this is an unprecedented time, and we often refer to this as the new normal, when in fact there is actually not much normal about it. And so I think one self-care tip is just recognizing that this is an unusual time and that we're all having to cope with a lot of unusual stresses. So being really mindful about what brings you joy and finding ways to make that happen, whether it's learning a new skill, going for walks, reconnecting with old friends, but using media, social media, or all of us using videos to talk to friends, family, finding ways to stay connected is really important. Also, we all know that eating right and sleeping and exercising are important, but now those things are even more important. So we encourage people to be grateful for what they have in their daily life and do specific things to really take care of yourself.
That's great advice for all of us. Thank you for joining me today, Betsy.
My pleasure.
To learn more about the Impact Everyday Centennial Research Initiative, including highlights and a few surprises, be sure to visit the ASAE Research Foundation Lounge for a discussion on Wednesday at 11:45. In fact, over the next 3 days, the Foundation Lounge will host a series of conversations about ongoing research projects. And you can learn about 2 new drivers of change identified by ASAE Foresight Works, the Foundation's environmental scanning effort that identifies the disruptive changes associations need to be ready for. So be sure to stop by the Foundation Lounge. But for now, did you know that more than 5,000 association professionals and industry partners have come together here at the virtual annual meeting? I'll let a few of them introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, it's Julie Shulo, CEO of Association Analytics. I'll be streaming ASAE Annual live from Indian Lake, Pennsylvania. And I'm most excited to hear about the global initiatives from CEOs. Now that we've gone virtual, it's really broken down the borders and opened up an opportunity for the entire industry, and I'm pumped. I also want to thank ASAE for bringing us together and leading us through the pandemic. So thank you, we love you, and see you around.
Hi everyone, my name is Abina Bonsu-Bruce and I'm with the International Association of Fire Chiefs. I am truly honored to be an attendee at this year's ASAE virtual annual meeting on August 10th. I'm particularly excited to hear Risha Grant talk about diversity and inclusion while shining light on its economic impact. I will be streaming live from Ashburn, Virginia, and I can't wait to see you all.
The session that I'm most looking forward to is Advocacy Beyond Government Relations. So why is that? Because as President and CEO of the American Forest and Paper Association, we see advocacy as a daily opportunity to educate policymakers and legislators, but also people like you and me. One way we're doing that right now is by teaching people the importance and value of paper recycling.
Hi, I'm Samantha Whitehorn, Editorial Director of Associations Now. That was a fun roundup of videos. It looks like our attendees are really excited to kick off their first day of learning. Speaking of learning, I'm joined now by 2 of today's Learning Lab presenters, Mandy Moody of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners and Wendy Toyama, CAE of the American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine. Welcome, Mandy and Wendy.
Hi. Hello.
Both of your sessions are going to discuss how women can increase their leadership impact and influence. So I have a few questions for you about the skills and relationship building savvy that could help people move forward in their careers. Mandy, let's kick things off with you. What do you think are 2 common traits that could hold association execs back from a leadership role?
Thanks, Sam. I think we're going to be discussing 3 in my session, but 2 that are very near and dear to me are building relationships and not just building relationships, but enlisting allies across an organization, and also sharing successes and achievements.
Great. Wendy, as a current CEO, what 1 or 2 skills do you think people aspiring to lead an association should develop?
I think the first one I would talk about would be thinking strategically. The board is looking for you to help them achieve that strategic plan. So you have to paint a picture and create a vision that can help get everyone on board. You also have to anticipate the what ifs so that you can be thinking a little bit ahead and accommodate the changes that may come, which leads me to the second skill, which would be agility. You just look at the world around us today, but I would even say when there isn't a pandemic, things change. It's just about when you think things are going smooth that something happens, and leaders need to be able to deal with change.
Mandy, you touched on this earlier, but self-promotion is uncomfortable for many people, but it's also very effective when done right. How can someone call attention to their value and achievements without coming across as bragging?
I know that I struggled with this earlier in my career, and I've gotten a lot better at sharing my own successes and my own achievements. And I am reminded of a session I attended last year at the ASAE annual pre-conference about how to move into the C-suite. And one of the things that they mentioned, and even a question they asked us directly, was, are you sharing goals, your successes, your achievements with people other than your direct supervisor? And that really hit home for me. So I think one way to do this is to use excitement to share the projects you're working on and share when they're successful, and share your goals with your leadership, with your CEO, with your executive director, with your peers, and also with your team. And that way, there's nothing holding you back, and there's nothing unknown to anyone who brings up your name about what's going on and what you're contributing.
Wendy, back to you. Relationships with people at all levels of an organization are necessary to build influence. How can a new leader initially build those relationships?
There are a few things I do. I make sure I'm intentional, so I include it in my 90-day goals. And I also create time. I actually call these listening conversations, and I have a structured agenda I follow, and I make sure that I set up time to meet with the board as well as coalition partners, stakeholders, and all of the employees. It's a really important thing in the first 90 days. And being authentic. I think you want people to be able to get to know you quickly. That means you have to use your voice, and maybe you've been coached or trying to act a certain way to get to where you are. But if you are authentic, it helps people get to know you more. So I would say use your voice.
I know both of your sessions are going to speak specifically to women, but what advice would each of you offer to men who want to be allies and help women in their organizations move up the ranks?
Sure. Yeah, my co-presenter and I were just talking about this, and we actually reference a book called How Women Rise in our session, and we talk about the characteristics in that book. And we told ourselves we need to hand this off to our male colleagues. And I think, just as Wendy just said, it's listening to those voices. You know, we're here to try and encourage those voices to get stronger and louder and to be more authentic. I think it is beneficial for any men leading women to listen to those voices and to learn how to listen to those voices. So to do some background reading and to do some deep research on how it is that men and women show up differently at work. And I think we all know, those of us who lead teams, that we have to customize our approach to each team member. They all have different needs and wants. So I think realizing that our approach has to be different for each person, and then developing the listening and the empathy to see where people are coming from.
Great. And Wendy, how about you?
Yeah, building on that, I think there's a little thing that you can do. It's very powerful, and that's ask for feedback. So it might be hard for me to go to a sponsor and say, you know, I'd like you to stop calling me dear. But if they invite the feedback, those kinds of conversations can happen a little more easily. I would also say our work's not done. doing things like an audit to make sure that pay is equitable across gender. Things like that are important, and also thinking structurally. Are there ways that we're conducting business that aren't inclusionary and that aren't inclusive? And I think, right now with the pandemic and school-age kids at home, there's a lot of considerations for what your employees are going through, and are there ways that I might be making it more difficult without realizing it?
Great. Thanks to you both for joining us today. To hear more from each of them, check out Mandy's Learning Lab this morning at 11 or Wendy Joe's at 2:30 this afternoon. But before we wrap up today's show, here's another short message from our sponsor, Caesars Entertainment.
That's it for today's edition of Associations Now Daily. Please join me again tomorrow at 9:15, when we'll take a special look at the impact and legacy of ASAE's Diversity Executive Leadership Program and meet some of the leaders and aspiring leaders who make up the unique DELP community. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.